down, I believe we want to go into the Beaver Local Beavers and talk a little bit about what they're bringing to the table in 2021.
Yep, go a little bit into the Buckeye 8 conference as we cover 3 teams that are within the Buckeye 8. And looking into Beaver Local, they were an offense that was pretty darn good too last year. They were an offense that averaged over 36 points per game last season. They're also an offense that's bringing back 8 guys. But to highlight some guys that they lost, Tanner Johnston is one of the key ones, the quarterback from last year. Logan Krulik, wide receiver, and Dylan Moore, another wide receiver. So you lose a pair of receivers and your quarterback from last year. But in guys that they're returning, Dorian Jackson is one named to highlight, senior wide receiver for them. Wyatt Loy is on the offensive line. Zane McCoy on the offensive line. So you have a pair of offensive linemen. Joe Monty, a running back. Nate Sprouse, a wide receiver. Dorian Jackson, a wide receiver, looks to be good. Micah Strum is on the O-line as well. So you have a lot of pieces on the O-line and a lot of very good receivers here on this team. So I think there's going to be a lot of potential for this offense. Yeah, you got to replace Johnston from quarterback last year, but you have a lot of pieces in place for any quarterback to step in there and be all right, I think.
Much like Warren JFK, you're losing a handful of skill position players, but you're returning the O-line, which has to make you comfortable as a head coach, knowing that you're at least going to be experienced up front, which is where it all starts.
Yep, and I think from what I've heard too, and what Mikey McKenzie too has highlighted.
Got to give Mike McKenzie just a round of applause for whatever he's doing today, because Mike McKenzie is always doing something special, and he's such a great announcer on ysnlive.com for us, and you're going to get a round of applause today, Mike.
From what we've heard, too, I think it's Zane Kinsey and Dorian Jackson are 2 that I think are currently competing. I think I've also heard Austin Klein as being another name that's in there for the quarterback race so far for Beaver Local. But, I mean, it's a race that's wide open, but it's a race that has a bunch of athletes going for it. And I think that's what Beaver Local is really looking to just implement in there, is put an athlete. Because I think the rest of the guys that are all wide receivers that are looking to convert to quarterback. So even if not, they're going to have a spot in this offense, and they're going to be a prominent part in this offense. Because Beaver Local looks like they're loaded up with athletes. They look like they were maybe a year off, another year of seniority. A lot of these sophomores are now juniors, now they're juniors or seniors. I think this is going to be a very good team. A team that averaged 36 points per game last year, you might be seeing around the same thing this year for the Beavers.
Let's talk about their defense on the other side, what they're bringing back, what to look forward to for their defensive unit in this upcoming season.
It was a team that was really good through the most part of the last season, and it was the last couple of games where they started falling apart a little bit, but overall, average wise, they allowed teams just over 21 points per game. And that's a number, if they can get that down a little bit, get it under the 20s, they're going to be very solid going into this year and win a lot more games. But there's a defense that's returning 5 starters. The losses, I think, Dylan Moore was one of those guys that played both wide receiver, defensive back. Tommy Warwick was on linebacker, and Payne Allen on D-line. And then some of the guys that I think returning that are going to be fun to watch. Dorian Jackson, again, is one of those guys, wide receiver, defensive back. Noah Boyer, linebacker for them. Wyatt Loy is another linebacker. Blake Lucas on the D-line, and then Nate Sprouse, too, the senior linebacker to highlight as part of one of the linebacking core that has, I think, 3 solid names to look out for, and it's going to be part of what makes that Beaver Local run defense so effective this year, and part of what needs to be the leadership core, I think, of that defense going into this year if they want to take a step of improvement. And I think that step of improvement will really put them in great position and great seeding in the playoffs as well. As a team that went 6-4 last year, I think they definitely want to look for 7 to 8 wins this year.
They were in a lot of shootouts last year, and I got to imagine their defensive coordinators thinking if we can just get 2 more stops a game, then we can raise up those wins, because our offense was so high flying, and we're returning a lot of production on offense. So I feel like Beaver Local's defense, we talked about a couple of teams before, they don't have to be perfect. They just have to be, add to their stops 2 or 3 more stops a game, maybe force 2 or 3 more turnovers, and they'll give their offense more chances to create some separation and not get into these shootouts where you feel like you have to score the next possession or you're going to be down by 7.
Or at the very least, if you want to take it in small steps, just hold them in the red zone from touchdowns to field goals. If you could at least do that and just hold points off of the board, that's at least a step in the right direction and trying to keep that average down and just less points scored from the other team.
For in high school, that's a lot easier because there are not a lot of guys that are kicking field goals from the 30-yard line. Like
exactly. So if you could keep, and not many teams have a very solid kicker in place. We've seen a couple of teams too where they go for it on fourth down, even if they're in position.
Most teams most teams outside of the ones that have special kickers probably start to really think about it inside in the 20. 57-yard field goal, that's kind of long. And if you start to get a little bit further outside the 20, then they start saying, well, we'll just go for it. So the red zone is going to be really important for Beaver Local red zone defense. And when you'll see that defense a lot. Well, actually, for Beaver Local fans, they're hoping they don't see the red zone defense a lot on the audible call. With my
and I mean it's a defense too that if you want to just take baby steps, that's the baby step to take too. And it's hard to improve a defense that only allows a little bit over 21 points a game anyway. So to try to take steps of improvement, you want to obviously do that so you're put into a better position for the playoffs. But it was already a pretty good defense last year. But I think it starts with just saying, hey, let's make sure these touchdowns turn into field goals. And then maybe the field goals turn into stops. And then you just try to build from there. Build it one possession at a time. But I think Beaver Local, with another year of seniority, they lost a little bit, but I think they bring back a lot more in experience-wise. And I think they're in a good position to have a decent run this year.
Let's talk about their schedule and what the Beavers have looking forward to them in 2021.
They open it up August 20th, home versus Indian Valley. August 27th is at Salem. September 3rd at Minerva. Then it goes into their conference schedule. But, I mean, out of conference, Indian Valley, at Salem, and at Minerva is out of conference, which are all going to be great games. That at Salem is going to be an interesting game, too, August 27th between Beaver Local and the Quakers. Going into their conference, September 10th is home versus East Liverpool, that big rivalry there, versus the Potters. And then September 17th, home versus Edison. Then we go September 24th at Oak Glen, I should say. I almost said Glen Oak. We have a Glen Oak, but there's Oak Glen in West Virginia. October 1st is home versus Harrison Central. October 8th at Indian Creek. So they play Indian Valley and Indian Creek. October 15th, home versus Martins Ferry. And October 22nd at Wheeling Central Catholic in West Virginia. So a pair of West Virginia schools on the docket for the Beavers, as they are right there, of course, on the West Virginia line.
And, of course, we have to circle the East Liverpool game because it's the rivalry, and we'll probably talk more about it when we bring up East Liverpool's football. I mean, that's just one of the big rivalries that doesn't get talked about a lot in our local media because they're so far away, but we know it very well here at YSN. They've both been affiliated to YSN for some time, and it's just one of those, just like every rivalry in high school, is taken super seriously, and bragging rights are going to be on the line once again to open up conference play, Beaver Local versus East Liverpool.
Talk to Mikey McKenzie and you'll know how real that rivalry is between the Potters and the Beavers. And it's going to be right there, week 4 of the season, opening up conference play. It's going to be that bright and early matchup. They want to make sure they get it in. And, it's going to be early, and it's going to be a great shootout, too. I think weather providing that rain stays away, I think this is going to be a really good game on a September 10th night.
And, we'll just highlight the other YSN team, too, because they play Edison, and Edison's a team that took maybe if you had to say, like, the most improved team last year from the year before, Edison might be that team. They went 0-10 in 2019 and really took a step up last season for the Wildcats.
Yeah, and they're a team we're going to be looking at, too, as we are looking at all 3 of the YSN schools that we cover within the Buckeye 8, which is East Liverpool, Edison, and Beaver Local. So we'll be able to take a look at the Wildcats. But, yeah, drastically improved. That's going to be another part of those games back-to-back, East Liverpool and Edison, that are going to be hard, too, because all your emotions going to be tied into that Liverpool game. But you got to make sure you have something left for Edison, because they'll make sure that you'll pay if you don't, if you take them lightly. And also, that's that other YSN school that we have, Salem. At Salem, August 27th is going to be a very good test, I think, for the Beavers early on playing the Quakers.
And I believe that'll be the only time that the Beavers will be on YSN where you won't hear Mike McKenzie call their game, because every other YSN matchup is in Beaver Local. And then, of course, the rest of their schedule isn't YSN. So Mike McKenzie going to do 9 out of 10 games for Beaver Local. I know the fans over in Beaver love hearing his voice. They're going to hear a lot of them this year.
Yeah, they get to hear a lot of them, but that week 2 game gonna have to go to the dark side a little bit. Have to listen to the Quakes, but yeah, gonna be some good matchups too. And three as we're lucky to see inter YSN school matchups too, as Salem getting scheduled this year. So fun to see that third matchup inter YSN schools.
Indian Creek game's always fun too. Beaver Local versus Indian Creek, they're really competitive with each other, and I believe that'll be one if you're a Beaver Local fan and you only want to go, if for some reason you only want to go to 2 games or 3, go to the 2 YSN games that are at Beaver Local, and then head on down to the Indian Creek game as well. That should be one that you circle. Always a very competitive football game.
Yeah, absolutely, and it should be a fun schedule for the Beavers as they look to take another step of improvement on offense and defense this year.